I'm Rick James and I am a father of two, and if your house is like mine, you've got shoes everywhere. I've got my wife's shoes, my shoes, kids' shoes, dog's junk, stuff is everywhere. And where is it? Always by the door where you come in, and it drives me nuts. So in this video, I'm going to turn this mess into this. So I had to leave 7 sheets of plywood for this job, 5 sheets of 3/4, 2 sheets of 1/2 inch. And getting older, I can tell you now, this Craig sheet lifter that I got was a perfect addition. It's so much easier to move large sheets around, and it's one thing I definitely recommend. So the first job is breaking down these sheets of plywood into manageable pieces. And the first thing I'm doing is getting my track saw out and using my cut list to just get them down to rough dimensions so that I can finalize them on a table saw. My track saw is really good for this. It takes a bit of time, but it makes it so much easier. The other thing that I'm using here is these Borer Centipede collapsible work table things. They're really handy. I can just collapse them back up when I'm not in use, but this helps to stop working on the floor with big 4x8 sheets of plywood. Okay, so that's all the plywood broken down using my track saw. If you don't have a track saw, a straight edge with a circular saw works just as good. The main reason why I've got a track saw is because that door there is straight into my house, and the track saws are awesome for accuracy, but mainly dust control. And you've seen how much dust a circular saw makes. If it goes through that door, I get to hear about it. So I've saved up for it. It's one of the best investments I've got, but it makes breaking down large sheets so much easier. So now that's all broken down into the rough cuts, now I can hop over to the table saw and bring it down to its final dimensions before we start going to getting into the assembly. Okay, so that's all the pieces of plywood cut to their final dimensions. Now we've got edge banding. So another big first for this project is edge banding, and yeah, it's pretty easy. I didn't really have any issues. It glues down really easy. The one thing you want to make sure though is get your own iron, because if your wife comes in or your partner comes in and finds you using their iron, I'm telling you now, they will hit the roof. So go down to a dollar store or something, or a used store, and get one of your own. You can see here that I'm using an X-Acto knife to take the edge down, and you're going to find out why shortly. So this shoe rack is pretty much my first major woodworking project, and it's also the first part of starting my shop. It's going to basically form the backbone of my workbench. And yeah, so far I've not had much luck with the edge banding. One, I'm still waiting for my edge banding trimmer to arrive, and two, I seriously miscalculated how much edge banding I need. I've still got all that to edge band. I've done about 8 pieces, and this is all I've got left. So when you're doing edge banding, make sure you measure, because I thought 50 feet was going to be enough, but apparently not. So back to the store I go. So my edge banding trimmer finally arrived, but this one is junk. Yeah, basically just kind of destroyed the edge of one of my shelves, which I'm gonna have to kind of redo. I tried to adjust the blades on it, and the thread stripped. So yeah, this one right here on Amazon, don't get. So for those of you who've been doing edge banding for a long time, what is the best trimmer that you've found? Because yeah, this one's junk. So now we're on to cutting down the pieces to size. I've got my father-in-law's old radial arm saw here. It's got a little bit of play in it, but I managed to get it all squared up. Took a bit of squaring, but it's finally there. I'm going to use my table saw as kind of like an infeed table, because my shop's not built yet, so I can't wait to get all this put into like a miter saw station all the way down the side. But for the time being, this is what I've got. So let's get on to breaking these parts down to their final dimensions. So as I'm using this radial arm saw, it's quite stiff to pull back and forth, which is not a good thing no matter how much I've tried to sort it out. I managed to get it nice and square for cross-cutting the pieces, but as I'm going through cutting them, I'm noticing there's a little bit of a wobble on the blade. Check the tightness and it looks like the shaft of the bearings are gone. So this is not going to work for Dados, which means I'm going to have to make some kind of routing jig because the panels are going to be too long to do them safely on my table saw. So this is a quick jig that I made up just using scrap pieces of plywood and basically brad nailed them together, made it sure it was perfectly square, and so far it's working really good. It's just time consuming. So I think I'm definitely gonna have to do something about dust control. I've got a bit of a dust port on the top of my router, so I think I need to get measuring, get that slapped onto the 3D printer and get something before my wife comes through that door and goes nuts. Because yeah, if I keep making dust like this channel and these projects are going to end pretty soon. So time for some cleanup, time for some 3D printing, and then we'll get back to routing. Okay, so I jumped onto SketchUp, threw this onto the 3D printer, grabbed it first thing this morning. So now it's time to go put it on and make some dust and see if it goes into my dust collection rather than all over the place. So time to carry on. So man, what a difference that 3D printed dust collection adapter made. The dust before was everywhere. Putting this on, connecting it to my shop vac made a huge difference. So if you want anything that you see in my shop, pretty much anything that 3D printed is pretty much orange. If you want your own versions of them, head over to averagedadsworkshop.com. I've got all the 3D print files that I've either designed myself or I've found on the internet, like on Thingiverse, and I've got them all on there for free, so you can just download them, give them to one of your kids, get them to print it off, and then you can have these things in your shop too. They are super handy, and as I get more things, I'll be adding them more on there. But 3D printing for a workshop is really handy. So one tip I've got when you're using a jig is to always make sure that you put the same edge on the same side. So as you can see here, I've got the edge banded edge facing out away from me. This way then, even if there is any slight discrepancies in the jig, they'll all be the same. So now we've got all the dados cut and everything is pretty much done to size. Now I've just got to go and give everything a light sand. So here we go again, another pile. This project has been one of those that just was way bigger than I anticipated. It was easy drawing it out on SketchUp, but yeah, it's been a mammoth task. So the finish line is in sight. So let's just get dusted up, get sanded, and then we can start assembly. So as a tip for everybody out there, coming from my pain, I don't know why I stuck so many pieces of tape on my parts. I think I was labeling factory edges and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it takes a nightmare of a time to remove all these pieces when you've got a lot of shelf panels to sand all the sides and all the faces. So just use one piece of tape to label it up. And to be honest, once your shelves are done for this one, you don't even need to label them. So I think taking the tape off sometimes took longer than actually just quick sanding the panel. Okay, now it's time to frame up, and yeah, got to make sure it's square before we go any further. So I'm just making sure that as I go, everything is square. I'm using these corner blocks with clamps. I'm using my large square just to make sure that everything stays square. And because all my shelves are the same size, as I do that and as I put them in later on, they should all slide in nicely. A few brad nails will help keep them in, and it should build perfectly square. So I think I've just gone and made a bit of a boo-boo. My plan was to basically try and build this from the top down, making sure it's all nice and square, so then I could level it out easier later on. I don't know where my logic was in that, but I've now just realized that's not going to work, because I just went to lift this up to put my braces in, and already it's heavy. So I think what we're gonna have to do now is try and lift it up without blowing my O-ring out, get into position, get it leveled, and then start working from the shelves bottom to top. Yeah, I think I've just made my life a bit more difficult. So if you're going to go and build this, I would definitely say do your base first, work from bottom upwards. It's probably going to be a lot easier. So let's go see how we get on. So for the base, I basically just created a 3-inch kind of kick plate underneath, but it's also used as a frame that this is all going to sit on, so then I can shim it, because my garage goes from the house out and it drops down as most garages do. So I'm just going to use this to shim it before I put the back panel on, to then make sure it's nice and level. So yeah, I'm glad I moved this now, because yeah, it's heavy. So here you can see I'm just putting in the shim just to level it up. It's only off by maybe 1/8 of an inch, but it's just enough that without shimming it, it would really look odd. So this is one of those jobs where you hear people say you can have enough clamps, and yeah, I wish I had more clamps. I had to kind of hopscotch each of the clamps, whereas if I'd have had more, I could have easily used more. So yeah, you can never have too many clamps in woodworking. Okay, so now we're heading towards the finish line. The shelves are all in and it's all looking really good. What I need to do now is I need to go and give it some protection, because this is going to be for shoes and boots. And we get a lot of rain here, so I need to get that wood sealed, otherwise it's going to find its way into the laminates and then just peel them up. So again, I don't know where my logic has been on some of this project, because I don't know why I just didn't go and get one of my mini rollers out and do this. Joys of editing, I can edit out the staining, because this staining I bet took me probably 2 hours to do this whole thing, whereas if I'd have just used a mini roller, it would have gone so much quicker. So that's all the clear coat finished. It took forever to manually do these. I was in two minds whether I should have just pre-done all the sheets and then assembled it. In hindsight, maybe I would do that in the future if I was to ever build this again. Actually, in fact, my in-laws saw it the other day and apparently they want one building for their place now. So I think if you're going to build one yourself, I'd probably say either get the pre-finished plywood, which is going to be a little bit more, but it's going to save you a lot of time, or finish it yourself, because there's minimal glue on this one. So yeah, things you learn as you go on. So now it's time to go and put the back panels on, and I went and dry fit them earlier, and I realized that I've cut them both the same size, which is kind of stupid because my cut list calls for them to be different sizes, so that I had the seam running right behind one of these shelves here. So now they're kind of here. So now what I'm going to do is cut one shorter, and I'm going to have a little bit of a gap at the top. You're not going to be able to see the gap, it's just going to be level with the 3/4 inch top, but I will see it from this side. So now I've got to think of something to put over there when this becomes kind of my tool wall for my workbench that is eventually going to go here. So follow your cut list. If it says to cut it a set size, cut it a set size. So as I'm going down, I started to notice this bit of a mark here, and the flushness of the trim isn't that good. So check the old router. Look at the bearing shot. So this one's going to be going in the garbage. Put pointers out there for you guys. I'm new. I'm learning as I go, so Check your bearings on your flush trim bits before you go down the edge. Oh well, nothing a quick sanding won't fix. Well, it's finally finished, and it took me all of about 2 minutes to get this thing loaded up and get the floor completely cleared. It's now free of shoes through that side of the door, and this thing is working awesome. Got the bins down the bottom for all of the hats, gloves, scarves, dog harnesses, leashes, you name it, and it's just awesome. I would definitely recommend you guys making one of these if this is a problem in your house, which for most houses that I've seen, it's everywhere. So definitely go check out the link below. You can go get yourself Lego style plans, step by step, cut list, parts list, tool list, everything that you need to build your own version of this and get yourself a nice organized area in your home for shoes and junk. You will not regret it, trust me.